Oh. Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to this Avi webinar. It's been a minute since we've had one. It's so great to have you. We are calling this webinar the hardest conversation, navigating the hardest conversation in agriculture, a relational approach to succession. Whether you're just wanting to get interested in ag or you are a multi-generational ranch operator, you probably know like there's a lot of farm and ranch land that's about to turn over in the next 20, 30 years. I don't have the exact estimate in front of me, but the number is staggering and insane. And how that happens is going to greatly impact our food security in the future. The ability for people who want to continue to steward land, whether they be people who are multi-generationally removed from land or people who have been ranching and farming for multiple generations to continue to do good work on the landscape. It takes a lot of intention. There's a lot of legal stuff that needs to be navigated, tax stuff. I think, and that stuff is really, really important. I think a lot of what we're going to talk about today is more of the soft skills. There's a lot of great resources for how we navigate like the legal aspects of succession, and that definitely plays a role. But the social skills, just like being able to like talk through things, especially when in family dynamics, when there's lots of history, is often where in our work through Avi, we have noted we were doing a lot of succession work with people and came to realize that it was way more complex. We all manage complex systems, right? It was way more complex than just, oh, you sign a paper and you buy out at this rate and everything. That there were big family dynamics happening and people being able to even be in a room and talk to each other was absolutely critical. So we're going to talk through Beth and Andrea's journey a little bit about their different stages of succession their operations are in, and learn what we can. And then we'll learn a little bit at the end about like how Avi is helping multiple families and organizations navigate this really, really intense, but also can be a really sacred time in terms of how the older generation gets to pass things on to the next generation of land stewards in a values-based approach. I thought what would be fun, because we all know each other pretty well. Beth, why don't you introduce Andrea? And Andrea, why don't you introduce Beth?
Oh, that's so good. Um, Andrea Malmberg is one of my ranching idols. Uh, not only does she have the most amazing fashion sense of any woman in the West, she is also just a tenacious organizer. She is a person who just leads with a lot of vision and heart. Um, and she stewards a very beautiful piece of land in uh, central, eastern Oregon. What do you describe your
Northeast.
northeast Oregon?
Yeah.
Um, and recently lost her husband Tony to cancer about a year ago. And in the lead up, when we found out that Tony was sick, I know you guys had done a lot of succession work and then have just been continuing to work through that. So I'm excited to hear what you have to share. And also, I think one of the really cool things about your operation is the way that you and Tony set up your business to allow it to be able to be passed on to other people is really inspiring to me.
Thank you, Beth. So I think Beth, I kind of know her succession story before she even knew succession because her dad was one of the first holistic management guides and practitioners. And Tony and I knew of him when we were in Wyoming, and it was so fantastic to move to the Pacific Northwest and be able to work with him a little bit. And then what I mean by succession is that I do exit reviews for people who become professionals in holistic management through the Savory Institute. And I do believe that Beth was the second generation of ever accomplishing that. And so that's kind of the first real conversation that I had with Beth. And since then, um, we have become friends and colleagues, and I think co-mentors of each other.
Oh,
I
me
love
blush.
those. I love that. Um, cool. Well, thank you both so much. I think I'm just going to kind of pepper some questions in, and I think because we have such a intimate group today, it's amazing. I think let's just, if folks want to kind of ask questions, like if it, maybe let me ask a question and then we'll let each of our panelists respond, and then if you have questions after each question, like feel free to jump on in. I'm sure we all have a lot to learn from everyone's different situations. So. Beth and Andrea, maybe I'll pull this to you first. Succession is often the conversation everyone knows they should be having, but families or organizations often avoid it, whether act subconsciously or not. What finally prompted you and Tony to begin the succession conversation?
So um, I think that, well, if anybody knows Tony and me, we think a little differently. And so um, I grew up as a cattle buyer's daughter, and so basically we were always on leased land. So um, you know, when I was a little kid out of in Bozeman, we leased a ranch that was owned by Ted Turner up the Boulder River. And that's just how it was done back then. You know, it was easy to lease land and things like that. And so, um, being pretty innovative, my dad, in terms of, and I mean, he was in it for a very long time. He'd be, I think, maybe 102 now. Um, uh, he passed about 12 years ago. He just really was able to be like see that, well, he was part of the whole transformation in the beef industry. And so we were leased land and commodity playing. That's kind of my role in agriculture to start with. When Tony and I got married, had he had a ranch that he had partners with in Wyoming, Lander, Wyoming. I'm just curious if this is the Liz Oswald that I know from Lander, Wyoming. Um, so, because that is a very interesting same name if it's not. Is it? Oh, okay. Anyway, um, so Tony had, well, Tony's father died when he was 50 years old, and he went bankrupt. I mean, if you haven't read his book, then yeah, I don't need to tell the whole story, or if you have read it. So Green Grass in the Spring tells the whole story. He went bankrupt, got partners, and so I married into a ranch that had business partners. Um, and um, and it was, you know, Tony has a daughter. I have a daughter with him. I mean, I feel like she's my daughter. Um, and um, we just didn't really have the the family necessarily that could um, have succession on the ranch. But then what really hit us was this idea that Bill Mollison says, that this is a quote, a determination to make our own way, to neither employers or employees, landlords nor tenants, but to be self-reliant in individuals and to cooperate as groups. So really what we were thinking of in terms of succession is that it's not necessarily family. We wanted to always just open it up to others, and we really did not want to be landlords, and we didn't want to be employers. And so in Wyoming, we envisioned and had in some enterprises that we looked at it as an onion. So what all the different things can we do? So hunting leases that we did. We worked with uh, the Allens, doing some really interesting and cooperative ways to have ranch guests. Um, we tried to we tried to garden, have a garden at 7,000 feet and an orchard, but what happened is that the snowdrifts were so tall on the orchard that the rabbits crawled up the snowdrift and ate the trees. Anyway, so that is all to say that that was a wonderful experience in Wyoming, but we also decided with our holistic context, where would we want to live if we lived someplace else? And that brought us to Oregon, and that's kind of where our real succession planning um, solidified, I'd say.
Amazing. Thank you, Andrea. Beth, same question to you. I can repeat it if you want.
Yeah, I just got word from Taylor that he is going to be able to join us. He just got in. So I don't know what wayward critter he was chasing, but he either got it or gave up on it.
Amazing. Do
Um,
you want to answer the question in the meantime?
yeah, I so the question was like, how did I get started on my
So the question is that, succession is often this conversation that is avoided either subconsciously or consciously by families and organizations. Like, what finally prompted your family to start having the conversation?
Yeah, a lot of it was my work with Avi, honestly. So I'm a fourth generation cattle rancher. I'm located just outside of Spokane, Washington. I-90 actually runs through the middle of the ranch. So if you've ever driven through this part of the world, you've probably been through the Lazy R. Um, and I think that my family was just, we were just kind of lucky in each of the generational transfers that had happened before me. My great grandparents came here in 1937. They left the ranch to their two sons, who my grandpa and my great uncle Cease, who ran it together pretty cohesively. When my uncle Cease died, his kids wanted exited out. My grandpa kind of assumed his half of the ownership, and then my dad's an only child, so there wasn't really much of like a contentious passing of the torch. Like it was very clearly like this is who's going to take on the mantle next. When it got to me and my sister, I don't think my parents expected either of us to ever be interested in ranching. I think they expected we would both go off and do other things. And then it was sort of like a weird curveball that I was like, I kind of want to stay here. And this is actually pretty fun to do. Um, and honestly, I don't think they had ever thought about how to pass things off in the future to us. Like it was just sort of a that is a problem we'll get to when we get to it, and that's a long, long time from now. Uh, when I started working with Avi and started working with some of our clients and facilitating some of these processes and conversations around succession, I mean, I already kind of knew this, but it just was like so crystal clear to me, like, oh my gosh, this can get so messy and so contentious and fall apart in a million different ways. And uh, I could see the writing on the wall that, like, if my parents did not leave clear instructions for my sister and I about how they wanted things to be done, that it seemed really clear to me that like it was going to cause a big rift in my family. That like if I ended up having to sell some big chunk of the ranch and I had to sit here and look at a housing development every day while my sister lived in a condo in Seattle. And my sister's not materially involved in the ranch anyway, has no interest in it. Um, I was just like, this is going to feed resentment inside me that's just going to eat me alive. Like, this is not the way that it should go down. And it's not what my parents or what my sister wanted, but the way everything was written on paper in my parents' will is that my sister and I were 50-50 heirs to everything that they owned. And upon their death, everything would be split in half between us. Well, that includes an 800-acre ranch 20 minutes from downtown Spokane, which happens to have a marketable price, a market value price tag that I will never have enough money to afford ever. Not in a couple lifetimes, probably. Um, So we sort of started like I kind of started this bugging them of like, hey, we need to talk about this. And we need to talk about this while you're still alive and can still make decisions about things and we can still have back and forth discussion about it. Um, and it's been way harder than I thought it would be. It's really it's just really difficult to figure out how do you make this kind of estate planning feel fair to everybody. If you haven't heard the Core Blund song S Lazy Age, it's the best succession planning song ever. But there's a line in that song that's like what is what is right isn't equal, what is equal is not fair, or something like that. And that is very much like the circumstance we're kind of up against in my family is like, how do we find a structure that, doesn't write my sister out of the will because I'm not trying to like dispossess her of her inheritance, but that also doesn't leave me in a situation where like I just don't have the ability to keep running a viable business. Uh, yeah, and we're very much still in the throes of working that out. It's not a solved problem yet.
Awesome. Thanks, Beth. You said that song. What was the song you mentioned?
S Lazy H. I'll put it in the chat if
Yeah,
anybody
put it in the chat.
to it. It's so good.
Awesome. Any questions at this point for Beth or Andrea? Okay, I'm gonna ask another question then while we wait on Taylor. Andrea, I'm gonna go to you first. What was one challenge in the succession process that surprised you? Something more that had to do with like the relationships, more than like the land and money and legal structures.
Um, so I think for Tony and I, we realized that succession had more to do with providing opportunities for entrepreneurship, land-based entrepreneurship, um, in that spirit more than blood. Of course, we would make room for family, and I will continue to. Like, if my grandkids end up wanting to be part of co-stewarding the landscapes that are under my trust, I would totally open that, and maybe even prioritize um, family. But I'd also prioritize the practice of holistic management, um, or at least prove up, um, I guess, if you will, if they didn't want to do holistic management, but just um, that the co-stewards could achieve financial, ecological, and quality of life uplift for the whole that we are co-stewarding together. Um, and so I think the challenges, um, one is with family is a lot of entitlement. So when we decided to sell the ranch in Wyoming, um, we um, we were going to sell it to Tony's sister, who has entrepreneurial spirit and holistic management like you can't believe. And so we were really excited about it, and we were willing to discount it quite a bit in order to keep that. And for whatever reason, the relationship dissolved, and that didn't happen. And unfortunately, they didn't talk for, I don't know, 17 years. So, so that is a rift that, well, now it's taken to the grave. Um, and so then I, the other part that's interesting, so when we did co-stewardship agreement, so I have a co-steward, Jeff Friesen, and um, it's a fantastic relationship so far. I hope it continues. Um, but it's really interesting because I hear so often, as many of you have, is that there's just no room for young people to enter into agriculture, to buy land, and all of that. I um, and I don't think it's a lack of necessarily entrepreneurial spirit, but I really think that our education has been so focused on getting a job,
Mm,
like being that employee employer relationship, being that leasing landlord relationship, that this that so that quote that I said, and you know, be self-reliant as individuals and cooperate as groups, is really something that's difficult for people to do. So so I think that that was the biggest, I mean, of recent time, is that is the biggest kind of blockade of, almost think it's kind of a blockade of the mind, of being scared to jump in and develop relationships based on cooperation, is can be really challenging.
mm. Thank you, Andrea. That's really, really awesome to hear you kind of zoom out like on these like larger cultural paradigms and how they can be influencing how we deal with succession. Beth, I'm going to pass it over to you to maybe introduce Taylor.
Great. Taylor, thank you so much for making it. I'm sure you were out chasing something or fixing something.
Yes,
But we're very pleased to have you. We're just going to kind of fold you into the program here. We just started asking questions.
thank
Um,
you.
Taylor is one of our clients at Avi. We've been working with Taylor and his very large extended family. I think there's over 35 family members associated with Yamsey Ranch. And we've been working with them for about a year to get these many, many different stakeholders on the same page about how to move forward um, with preserving the ranch and preserving the livelihoods of the people that are there, and also taking care of all of the family members that are connected but not there, which has been quite a feat. I don't know, Taylor, if you want to say anything about maybe just briefly what your experience of that succession planning process has been.
Well, to begin with, in January of 24, New Year's Day, Andrea and Tony Momberg showed up at her house, and with the conversation of how would we include holistic management in our family ranch, and at the time we were stuck. We were we had gone from one decision maker, which was my mother, to 10, and we were not intentionally, but we were stuck in that we were not communicating, not talking, and relationships, I would say, had deteriorated to a low. So that's where began. We were stuck. Uh, we were behaving poorly, I would say, myself included. And my brothers and I really weren't wanting to talk. We weren't wanting to answer text or call each other on the phone, which it had deteriorated to that state. So, right or wrong, that's where we were. We were stuck. My mother had passed away. Both my mother and father are gone. And we really didn't know how to move forward. But we did want to entertain the idea of having guides and just make the effort to practice holistic management. Again, that's one thing that historically from the 80s, our learning curve went steep and way up, and we were excited about that subject. So we revisited that, and through Andrea and Tony and the Avi Hub and getting Beth on board to serve as our guide on Monday morning coffee hour. Um, to make the story short, it has turned around. We are communicating, we are running an effective business And at Easter this year, there were 65 people at the ranch house. And the tone was, I would have to say, to my surprise, joyous and fun. And anyway,
And it had
uh,
basically been since before your mom passed away that you'd had a big family celebration like that, right?
yes, it was,
Like 7 years.
it'd been a while.
Yeah.
We had the celebration, but we also had the bit of a implosion, if that's a word.
Mm.
But anyway, through the help of having some guides and outside facilitation, we were able to get back on track, I think. And, sometimes you get almost out of an act of luck, you get the right people on the bus, and we got a V on the bus. And I think that's the best thing we've done.
Shucks. Well, it's been really just a joy to work with your family. Um,
I get emotional just because I just love this family and the ability to work with them. Um, so excuse me. That's just how I feel about you all.
oh,
Oh, I know one important thing that I was wondering how we transformed, how the relationships just seemed to start the healing process. But the focus with Avi was to, instead of focusing on expectations of each other, we focused on getting structures in place, the grazing plan, the fishing lease, the grazing lease, the Monday morning call. We worked on getting structures in place, which is a major shift from expectations of each other, which were just not in a good place to begin with. But I think that was just a major act of importance, something we did right with the guides of the.
yeah. I
But
mean, and
anyway,
even
I found that interesting.
they're just going to tack on like even creating structure for feedback or having difficult conversations. Like we create structures for everything. So it's like, but there's like a format even for how to have those difficult conversations so that if people feel unsure, it's like, okay, here's something for you to rest those ideas on, and tools to help people be able to communicate more effectively. Um,
Yes, we made great leaps, I feel, learning to use Zoom calls and showing up virtually. And then I think we've been historically good at getting everybody's voice in the room when we had meetings on the ranch, but we weren't getting it done with their own family. So, anyway, I think that was really important too, just being patient with each other to learn how to get on the call virtually and join the Monday morning meeting, and then just the process that Beth has led us on, where we check in, everybody's voice is in the room. You know how you're doing, you know how you've affected the group positively and negatively. And anyway, the process is working, which I find interesting.
Easy, and thank you, Taylor. Um,
can I answer that second question?
I was just deciding whether, yes, please,
Yeah.
Beth, answer the second question.
So the question we asked just before you hopped into, and I'm going to pass this over to you next, is like what's a challenge in succession that surprised you, and something that maybe had more to do with relationships than with like structure or money or land. Um, and for me, I don't think this shouldn't have come as a surprise, having done so much work with another family, helping them with succession planning, but just I was surprised when we went through our own, and we haven't had as much facilitation for our process as like Taylor's family has. We've been working with American Farmland Trust, and they do provide some succession facilitation. Um, I was just surprised at how difficult navigating family systems can be, how some of those like deeply baked in things from childhood that you think are not that big a piece of your personality just can immediately like come totally to the surface as soon as you're in a conversation with your parents or your siblings. Um, and yeah, I mean like I think when you're getting down to brass tacks of like who gets what, how are we doing this? Um, and you're talking about something that is so important to people, but also means something different to every single person. Um, it's really, really hard to navigate through that conversation. Uh, I mean, in the like my sister said something in our facilitated session that was like something she used to say to me as a kid all the time that always bothered me, and she just like casually said the same thing again in this meeting, and I was just like, "Woo!" Like just immediately threw me back to being like 11 years old, just like ready to like scrap and have a tantrum. Um, and it's yeah, it takes a lot. Well, it takes having, I think, that skilled neutral facilitator to be able to hold the space and keep the like North Star kind of like bright in the sky so everybody has something to orient to. I cannot imagine trying to have this discussion without having a facilitator. Um, and and unfortunately, it's not like really common practice to bring in outside people to these type of discussions. It's usually it's a family thing, right?
Mhm.
Taylor, what is something that surprised you?
Well, one thing that surprised me was how far south we went in relationships and how quickly we got there to the point of, oh, Becky and I are kind of calling it the dead face, where there's no longer, the eyes don't come open, the smile doesn't come. It's just this deadpan faced communication. The fact we got there surprised me. I really didn't know how I had offended some of my family members. And I've forgotten to this day. It's more of a, I don't know, hurt feelings for a lot of different reasons, a lot of emotions tied up in a ranch that it means so much to so many people. And maybe it's just, a place to vent, you taking it out on each other. But that was surprising. And then the other surprising thing was the shift when we shifted from expectations of each other to structures in place and how that worked.
Mm.
It worked really well. We were, we just, I don't know, kind of forgave each other and moved on and
Mm.
focused on what needed to be done. But that was new information for me. And and then Tony, uh, most things Tony said to me kind of surprised me. But he said, "You're not, to me personally, you're not here to tear down structures. You're here to put them in place." And I had to step back because I was part of the problem. That didn't surprise me, but how I was part of the problem did, in that uh, I was not happy with anything my siblings were doing. They weren't good enough. They weren't doing the right things. I was really part of the problem. But when Tony said that to me, I think I did think about how I needed to behave, and that
Mm.
both surprised me and helped me forward because I did focus on structures and how to put structures and help put structures in place, and not on everybody's shortcomings, including my own. You know, that was part of the surprise. I could still go on if necessary.
No, that's amazing, Taylor. Thank you. Maybe I'll pitch this next one to you, Taylor, then we'll go to our other panelists. Looking back, what do you wish your family had understood earlier in the succession process?
Is it my turn?
Yeah, it's your turn.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, so like as you're like looking back and reflecting on this process your family has been through, like what do you wish you and maybe the family collectively had understood about succession earlier in the process?
First thing that comes to mind is there's been some trauma to deal with, and as there is, I'm sure, in all families. I think mine personally was around financial trauma through the farm crisis of around 1979 and dealing with that. But I, I, I'm thankful for what we've dealt with, like with collective voices and the work with Jesse helping us to deal with the trauma. But I wished we'd had a better understanding of how that has affected each and every one of us, and just a little more empathy and compassion and understanding and walking in each other's footsteps. That I think would have been helpful earlier on, but at the same time, I'm grateful we've kind of got there today.
Mm,
So, anyway, that's one idea that comes to mind.
that's amazing, Taylor. Thank you. Andrea, could I ask you the same question? Like, what do you wish you and Tony had understood earlier in the succession process?
May I ask that maybe
Yes.
you put in collective voices
Yes.
and give a little bit about that. Just I want to just like kind of frame that a little bit is that I'm very into structures in holistic management. And so I'm pretty, what we have, what we have kind of discovered is that I really like looking at the soil surface and above, but going deep is a little hard. And um, so both Beth and Katie and Abby, our colleague, have done work in some very deep work in the soil surface, the soul surface, if you will. And I cry too easily to be able to do it, for one thing. I can't hold that space very well. So, and they were trained with Jessie Kushner, and she facilitated some of this deep grief and trauma work um, that hangs out under the soil surface. So, um, all right. So that's a little background on that process anyway. So what is the question? Okay, I have it here. Okay. So um so the structure's in place. So um I think one thing is that so a structural process that we use at Avi with families and businesses is um understanding what your joys and responsibilities are. So um even though, so Tony and I were the decision makers for our ranch, and there were certain things that were joyful for each of us, and but we also had responsibilities that we had to do that we didn't want to do. Okay, and so we go through a process of really understanding what those are. And it's like, if there are responsibilities that you just can't do or you hate to do, who else is out there to really create a resource base so that you can do it? Like, so I love finances. I love strategizing about creating different businesses, and I like working on the policies that are inherent in so much of our work. I just like in kind of like that policy side is kind of like this I don't know, lobbyist fighting attorney side of me that I don't know where it came from. I'm not one, but it's just I like to create better futures and through policy. So um, I love to be around yearlings and fatten cattle and sort cattle on foot. Um, and to most people's chagrin, I riding horses feels really bad on my body, and I don't really like it. And so, um, but you know what? There's a whole bunch of other people that love it more than anything in the world. And so, um, so anyway, just looking at those joys and responsibilities and like thinking of, I think a lot of times we see a landscape as flat, and instead of seeing it like as what is the expression that this landscape can provide for a whole bunch of talented people. And because my belief is that we should not be worrying about our carbon footprint. We should be um, thinking about our carbon handprint and our mind print and our heart print. And I think that the most important people in the entire universe, I don't know about the universe, on Earth, because I don't, yeah, um, on Earth are the people that are at the soil surface. And if we can expand opportunities um, for that love and caring and entrepreneurship and creativity that comes out of us being connected with land and livestock, great things can happen. Of
Mm,
course, you have to have the mindset, though, around it is that it's not only low stress livestock handling, it's also nonviolent communication among family members. Because there's my background is not in that way. Grew up with a lot of violence around working with family, and also how the tradition typically is how we work with livestock.
mm.
Um, so I think that's it. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Andrea. I just can't believe how much this time is flying. I want to make sure we have time for questions, but I have just one last question for each of our panelists. Beth, I'm going to start with you. For families who know they need to start succession conversations, but feel overwhelmed or stuck or don't know where to begin, what's one step you would encourage them to take in the next year?
Oh my gosh, just start something. Um, I think they're like whether it's working with someone like Avi who can provide, I have coffee with Taylor's family at 6:30 every Monday morning, and I have for the last year and a half, and I probably will for a couple years more. We can provide a lot of direct support, or like I've said, my family's worked through American Farmland Trust, which does have free support for families navigating succession transition. Um, I think finding some kind of neutral guide to help you move through the process is really, really important. But I think just getting started in any way is better than waiting. I think I've been back here for 15 years. I moved home. Actually, this will be my 16th year since I moved back to the ranch. For most of that time, it's just sort of been like, well, we'll figure it out. And my parents are in charge of things and I am not, and I will just sort of coast along until that changes. And there just wasn't like clear ramifications for what any of the decisions I was making or my sister was making as a young adult. Like no one understood what the ramifications of those decisions would really be. Um, and thankfully my parents are in their mid 70s and very healthy, and we have a lot of time to keep navigating through this. But I think it's been, yeah, like I just have moved through most of my time here just sort of thinking that things were outside of my control, and there are decisions I just might have made differently if I had understood fully like what those ramifications would be. Um yeah, I don't know. I don't want to get too much into airing my dirty laundry, but I kind of do. So You can ask me more questions about it in the Q&A if you want.
Slip into Beth's DMs for all the dirty laundry. Taylor, same question for you. For the families who know they need to start the process, but maybe feel overwhelmed or stuck, how would you encourage them to just take even one step in the next year?
Well, I only know is what we did, and we were stuck, and we were in really not too great of a place as far as relationships. And how we did start is Tony and Andrea came to our door, came to our house. But my wife, Becky, and Andrea had known each other for quite some time too. So there was that connection of somebody trusted to contact, and it unfolded from there. So that is my experience, and that's all I know.
Amazing. Thank you, Taylor. Andrea, last question for you. For the families or organizations that know they need to at least start this conversation, but maybe feel overwhelmed or stuck, what's one step you'd encourage them to take in the next year?
So my hunch is that a lot of people have some legal documentation in place. And some don't. Okay, so whatever the spectrum is, um, one is knowing what is there, knowing what the accounting is. Like when Tony's dad died at a young age of 50 from a heart attack, he didn't know that the place was broke um, when he was in his 20s, and that was during the farm crisis of the 70s. So one would think somebody should know that, right? So just like having that knowledge of what's going on, where do you stand, I think is important, but then it is not the place to really start. This stuff needs to start at an emotional level. It needs to start at a relationship level. And attorneys and accountants are super important, but they only give advice that you can take or not take. And so it really needs to be a perspective thing of like your family, like perspective meaning that what is it that I want for me personally. Don't forget about you personally, um, you as a family, you as a business, if it's not a family business, and what you want um, far, far into the future for the land under your care, or the business or whatever your service that you're providing to humanity. Um, it is very interesting that the the definition of legacy is also a burden. And so, how can we make it less of a burden? I am cleaning so much stuff out because I don't want my stepdaughter to have to deal with um, boxes of receipts that Tony kept since 1984 that we moved from Wyoming. Like, what? And I did the same thing for my parents. So, like, you don't need to keep um, utility bills, really. So, anyway, so trying to create a process of also leaving things less burdensome for those who are beneficiaries of what you've created.
Amazing. Thank you guys. One of the other things Avi offers is we will, anyone who wants to just talk to us about basically anything for an hour, like there's no fee. Like if you want to call us up and usually you're talking to me first, and just to hear like your story and what's happening, and even just to like externally process some of what's maybe happening for an organization you're a part of or a ranch, and even if working with us is not the right fit, like we really try to be plugged into like what's kind of happening in the greater context of our work. And maybe there's some resources we can port you to. So please reach out. I'll throw my email in the chat if you'd like to schedule a follow-up and just talk about what's going on and what your situation is. And I want to make sure we use the rest of our time for questions. And I see Camilla, you have a hand up.
Hello, good to see you, Taylor.
Oh,
Um,
see you.
I have a question to all of you a little bit. So how would you, or did anyone experience that some family members didn't really want to get involved in it or were very pessimistic? Because I've experienced this in my own family. I tried to push towards like a family reunion even or something. And all I got back was, oh, we don't see this, or we don't even want to consider working on this. And it ended up my dad is suing his mother right now. So it ended up in everyone suing each other instead of having um, like a conversation again. And for me personally, as I try to push towards communication, it's quite hard to when do I take the step back and say, okay, I'm still open for conversation, but I don't want to get hurt or involved in any further um, messy kind of constellations. So either like, have you felt this moment where you said, okay, I'm gonna step back, or have you felt like, okay, what was your strategy to get everyone on board?
feel
Anyone?
like this is I feel like this is a tailor-made Taylor question. But from a facilitator standpoint for Yamsey, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts, Taylor. I have written here on my whiteboard, and this is like my guiding star for Yamsey is move at the speed of trust. We move at the speed of trust. So we cannot go any faster than we have built trust within the people that we're talking to or trying to get engaged. And in Taylor's family, there were I mean, there's a lot of family members, so of course they're going to be all over the board. There were some folks, some people that were very, very engaged, very ready to tackle, like, let's figure out why these communication issues are happening. Let's figure out the structures. And those core people have really been carrying the momentum forward. And then there are still some family members that are very like arm's length from the process and still I think a bit skeptical. I think we're finally starting to turn the corner of that, but it has taken, I mean, it has been a year and a half um, of very consistent, diligent work amongst that core group of people that did have the energy and commitment to move forward. And it's sort of like I think we've kind of taken the attitude of like, well, we're gonna just make it so good and so functional over here that eventually anyone who's skeptical is gonna get curious and kind of like start poking their nose in and want to get involved more. And Taylor, I don't know how it's felt from your side, but that's kind of what I've seen.
I think you said that really well. I keep telling myself we're going slower to go further. And I am interested in who was kind of left behind in the process. Uh, One example is my niece, who was uh, just deeply tied to the ranch and her grandmother, my mother, and just really couldn't get herself in a place to be involved without her fear of just imploding. And at Easter, she did mention that it felt really good to her to be at the ranch house, to be involved, to help put all the sheets away in kind of a cryovac bags for the season, for the upcoming recreation season where we don't use the house. We use the house as family for 6 months and recreation fishing business for 6 months. So anyway, just to be seeing the people on the periphery that don't feel comfortable being involved, even coming on the Monday morning call, are slowly, like Beth says, getting curious, getting feeling that brave enough to partake in what way they seem fit. So it's just interesting to see. we're going slower, but going further. And we're seeing some of these family members start to feel comfortable enough to be involved in whatever capacity. I've been thinking we need to get the hexagonal peg in the hexagonal hole and finding a place for everybody in the family because we're all not round or square pegs, but we're all have a life experience, talent, and we just need to find a place for all of us. And I think we do have the right people on the bus to go forward, and I don't think there's a family member we need to get off the bus. I think we just need to spend more time figuring out where we fit and where we can be helpful and where we can contribute. Because at the end of the day, I think that's mostly what we would like.
Thank you, Taylor. I want to make sure we get to Sonia's question. So, Andrea, if you have an answer, I'll just kind of ask you to combine them. Sonia, I see your hand. What was your question?
Oh, yeah, I will reach out to you, Katie. And but first of all, I just went to, I've been a fan of Abby's and Sarah's and Andrea's quietly in the back reading and just celebrating everything you guys have been doing. And so I do want to say that. And I especially want to say the relational aspect is so key with so many women being, you know, being responsible in the end because they do live longer, or maybe they are the ones getting back into farming and ranching. These are, we just have to balance the heart with the head. That's all. And we've been ignoring the heart for way too long. That's all I can say.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Well, we're just at the top of the hour. Unless there's any final questions, we probably have time for one more if anyone had one. No? All right. Well, feel free to come off mute and say goodbye. It was so great to have everybody here, and we're so grateful for you guys having the hardest conversation with us on a Wednesday morning. Thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.